Good afternoon, South Africa. Good afternoon to all our participants on our webinar this afternoon. My name is Gerald Mwandiambira, and I'm here representing the South African Savings Institute. I'd like to welcome you to the third of our webinars and for our series of webinars for July Savings Month, which is National Savings Month. And if you're joining us for the first time now, you've missed a lot. You've missed a webinar where we address the concerns of the youth and how they can start preparing for adult life in terms of their finances. And also you missed another webinar where we spoke about the future of the stokvel and how stokvels are becoming a lot more sophisticated and geared for the modern life of investments and more sophisticated classes of assets. So if you want to catch up on those webinars, they are available on the SASSI Facebook and YouTube pages, so fear not. But thank you for joining us this afternoon. This afternoon is a great afternoon. We're here to discuss SMEs, small and medium enterprises, and we're going to talk about entrepreneurship. And what many people want to know is, how can I start my own business? How can I manage my business, especially with the challenges which everyone is facing currently right now? Millions of small businesses are faced with huge obstacles as the coronavirus has shut down much of our economy, and staying afloat has become a challenge. And entrepreneurs have had to find creative ways to adapt on the fly, restructure funding, and even manage that thing they call cash flow. Join us as we discuss some of these challenges this afternoon. We've got two awesome speakers lined up for us. Firstly, we've got Mfuphi, who's a conversation strategist broadcaster on Kaya 95.9, entrepreneur. She's basically an entrepreneur. She's self-made, she's a brand, she's someone who basically knows and the pain of the gig economy, someone who knows the pain of running a small business, invoicing, waiting for that payment, all those challenges which small businesses face. We're going to have a talk from Google, who's going to share with us how she has survived through this pandemic, the lessons she has learned, and also some of the insights which she gains, because in one of her other roles, she's always hobnobbing around the world, rubbing shoulders with some of the business leaders we can only dream of ever meeting. So over to you, Google. What do you have for us in store this afternoon?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time today, Gerald, and to our participants and audience members who have joined us. We're really excited that we can share some of this content with you here today. Now, we are mindful of the fact that we are living in a virtual world. So whilst we're not able to physically interact and be in touch with one another, I am looking forward to some of your feedback through the chat service, through the Q&A session, and looking forward to some of the questions and the themes that many of you will be able to raise and share with us here today, as we really look to distill and unpack a rather important topic and subject that is quite close to my heart. So if you are present, we're looking forward to your feedback, and I'm quite excited to hear what your thoughts are on the current economic environment. For the moment, as we know, given the virtual world that we live in, we are quite keen to share some details with you. So I'll open up a presentation that I want to share with you as I look to distill some of the highlights and elements that I'd like to share with you in conversation here today. So as we do in this virtual realm that we live in, the proverbial, can you see my screen? If possible, please give me a thumbs up, even if it happens to be one of the emoji cons that you can actually make use of in conversation today. Well, I'm hoping that all of you can see my screen. And as Gerald has mentioned, entrepreneurship. I've titled this particular presentation, It's a Hard Knock Life, because the truth is, for many South Africans and entrepreneurs, one thing that we often understand is that it's quite a challenging environment to do business in. Thank you so much for the thumbs up, as well as confirming that you can see my screen. Coming back to the presentation, though, what I do want to share with you is the fact that it's been a difficult one for many entrepreneurs, specifically for individuals like myself. I have a very interesting environment that I operate in. And that's the fact that I don't necessarily work as an entrepreneur who has a product that's on the shelf and easy to take off, but one that is based on conversations, largely leveraging on research material that I compile together with the clients that I work with, and then leverage on the partnerships and communication strategies that we're able to implement in sharing some of the strategies they'd like to follow through with. So that's essentially my role as a conversation strategist. working with clients within the corporate space, government, and civil society institutions, and helping them have simple conversations that speak to the members that they want to address, to source solutions, highlight challenges, and create an overall sense of awareness of the mandate that they look to serve in society. One of the other elements that was highlighted by Gerald is the fact that I do have the fortunate opportunity to wear multiple hats. And on a day-to-day basis, I often work as a financial journalist, broadcasting business and financial news on a number of media platforms. And this does help me understand the overriding experience of many entrepreneurs, given the macroeconomic backdrop that we have in South Africa. So as we always do, before we get to understand the nuances of individuals, we want to understand what the overall climate is. And this is where I'd like us to start for today. Understanding the performance of SMMEs within South Africa's economy and the pressure points that we've certainly experienced. Well, it's well documented that even before COVID-19 and the pandemic hit us, South Africa's economy has been struggling. We've been struggling to meet great targets in terms of economic growth performance, reaching the targets in terms of unemployment and mitigating unemployment, specifically within the youth environment, and also making sure that we're able to attract the necessary economic climate and investment that comes into the country. One certainly does think about how the pandemic hit back in March last year, and the subsequent lockdowns resulted in, again, significant losses of jobs. Not only were industries brought to a halt, but it exacerbated the climate of job unemployment as well as retrenchments that recently took place in the South African environment. What we also need to be cognizant of focusing on is the most recent SA shutdown. Just 1 week of looting has certainly resulted in damages to South Africa's economy that are still being collated today by leading retail companies and property firms who have yet to finalize the final number of damage that has occurred. But one thing's for certain is that what we've witnessed there is that the numbers are adding up. And according to SAPOA, the South African Property Owners Association, in total, the damage that has been caused to a lot of the retail centers, the warehouses, the ATMs, and communication infrastructure, just to name but a few, will likely cost the South African economy about 50 billion rand in GDP. That's quite substantial. It's a huge number, one that might still be able to be covered by insurance, specifically the South African Special Risks Insurance Association, or SASRIA, who will bear the burden of that cost. But what we're mindful of is that this means that the tellers, the securities at the parking lots, the packers who pack the goods and services we need on the retail shelves. If we take a look at the guys and companies that manage the services of shopping malls, making sure that the electricity is working, making sure that all the automated doors and security service are also in place, those particular jobs at the moment have literally been put to a halt. And this speaks to a report that's also recently been published by PwC, highlighting that on the back of the looting, what we'll witness in South Africa is a significant shortage of jobs. Upwards of 50,000 jobs might actually be at risk of not resurfacing in the local economy as investors look to readapt or change the manner within which they actually conduct their services, given the current violence and, of course, the looting that we witnessed in the last week. So one thing's for sure, the second quarter GDP figures will be closely monitored. We did see a pickup in the first quarter, just around 1.1%, about 4.3% if it's annualized. We know that unemployment is going to be an additional pressure point. That figure currently sits just below 33% in South Africa. But when we do take a look and reflect on the second quarter and third quarter numbers, these will definitely have a significant impact on South Africa's economic performance. And what does this do? It takes away the cultivating environment that entrepreneurs and SMMEs need in order to make sure that they are able to thrive. So this adds on to the pressure that many entrepreneurs are likely going to face in the upcoming months. And not just the kind of entrepreneurs who are building their businesses and operations within the services or product space, but even for entrepreneurs who align their business strategies to that of big corporates. Think of companies like Musica, Dion Wyatt, and even a few others like Flight Centre, who recently have had to shut down in recent months due to the economic climate and the extensive pressure points of the lockdown criteria. All of these actually speak to the value chain and supply chain, which will likely impact the growth of entrepreneurs within this sector. So one thing's for certain is that we are still going to see a lot of pressure being faced by entrepreneurs in South Africa. So that sets the backdrop for the overview of entrepreneurship in South Africa. But I'd like to share my personal story and my experience, and maybe starting off from my journey. Like many South Africans, I perhaps started off with a side hustle before delving into the world of entrepreneurship. I'm fortunate enough to operate and work within the media space, having worked in TV, radio, corporate speaking, as well as print media. And the opportunities that this has opened up for me is to actually continue to present, facilitate, moderate, and MC conversations with clients, which initially started off as being part of the gig economy, where intermittently I'd have the opportunity to engage with clients, conduct speaking services, and then be remunerated for it. Instead of this just being additional income that popped into my bank account as a sole proprietor, I then transitioned in 2014 to open up a business account and actually follow through with the necessary procedures to have an established communications company. This in itself, like for many entrepreneurs, came with a few hurdles, because what it does actually speak to is making sure that you understand your value proposition, going back to what the basics and the foundation of your business actually is, and making sure that you form the right networks within your communities to make sure that business is sustainable. Now, Mr. G might have mentioned slightly earlier that I've had the opportunity to travel and speak to many leaders on a continental scale and even globally to fully unpack and understand what their strategies are and engage with them in conversations. So typically, as depicted by this image, I'd be able to sit across individuals at corporate conferences, host interviews and conduct television productions on location, traveling vast areas either of the country or of the continent. But we all know that COVID happened. And in the month of March, when the announcement was essentially made by the president that we'd be moving to a hard lockdown in South Africa, this is where my income supply and revenue projections for at least the first quarter of the year essentially dried up. For a good period of at least 3 weeks worth of work, which entailed some traveling, which entailed additional speaking activities, this is where my revenue literally dried up. Now, fortunately, there were some clients who were able to pivot and switch up to the new digital age that we live in. But that meant it came at a significant cost, where I myself had to recreate the services that I offer, where ordinarily speaking in front of streams of audiences, recording voiceovers within highly equipped and established studios, and of course also broadcasting from studios of major technology or major media companies, all came to a grinding halt. And much like you and many other South Africans, my dining room table became my office space for a good period of 2020. This in itself did require that I had to switch up on the back of COVID. This essentially spoke to adapting to this virtual world that we live in. So fair enough, when it comes to the world of events, this has been slightly easier as webinars and conferencing material and products have actually made it so much easier for us to interact. But it also came with a substantial investment, not only in the equipment that I owned, making sure that data connectivity was also efficient, purchasing goods like ring lights, and at some point, trust me, those files did move away and I was able to purchase a laptop stand. But these are all some of the shock waves that I had to absorb as an entrepreneur. Number one, making sure that I'm actually fully equipped to manage the limitations on cash flow and revenue that was anticipated to be generated. And then secondly, making sure that I had all the necessary equipment in order to adapt to the new environment of working in a virtual world. I've often made the joke that this is where I had to become my own makeup artist, my own director, my own production manager, managing cameras, lights, and all the action and research that comes behind it. So as an entrepreneur, this certainly became a new jurisdiction and a new realm within which to work in. This also spoke about flexibility. And as we are doing in this current virtual world that we live in, often at times with a live event where people are interacting and in person, we often are able to work within a structured system, coordinate, communicate any particular changes that might have to be implemented. But in a virtual world where we are limited in terms of the amount of interaction we can have, this really called for myself to improve on my level of flexibility, managing technicalities when the line goes down, making sure to unmute when you are the speaker who needs to be focused on, and also prioritizing the right equipment, the right lighting, managing content when either your guests or audience members are not able to participate. And of course, making sure that I maintain the quality of the production by sharing energy and excitement with you as an audience, even though I'm unable to solicit some of your responses live and in person. So very briefly, what this led me to learn over the period of COVID, and of course the importance that of a number of elements that came to the fore, was these three elements that I do want to share some details and provide clarity on. My personal experience is that when it came to COVID and the move to March of 2020, where everybody was doing everything virtually, technology has become a great friend, but it can be a fickle friend, either in terms of the connectivity that we have, but also the access and opportunities it's provided us with when it comes to social media. And for many platforms, be it Facebook, be it Instagram, be it Twitter, we've seen how these particular social media platforms have evolved in themselves to be areas where conversations can be held live. And this has really democratized access for conversation strategists like myself to actually meet new clients, interact, share their value, and of course, solicit new streams of income and revenue. This actually meant that I needed to make sure that as a brand that is built up on an individual capacity, a person with a great sense of financial understanding, who has built solid relationships with clients over the years within the financial services industry, make sure that I had to put myself and stand head and shoulders above the crowd. So speaking to the kind of needs that my clients have. How do I go beyond reading a script? How do I go beyond clients actually making assumptions as well that maybe one just reads a script or just shows up in front of a laptop and in front of a camera and conducts the program? That's when I had to realize the kind of value add that I do need to bring to the conversation and sharing that with my clients. So usually that goes into the background system of helping clients craft their conversations, understanding what particular landing points we'd like to emphasize, and making sure that I show that and emphasize that within the product end result of my work. Contracts, very important. Like me, many of you might engage in being a service provider and having moved from being a sole proprietor to then being an entrepreneur. And this is where anything that is put on paper is literally worth gold. As an entrepreneur who works within the realm of the speaking arena as well as media, as mentioned, when the line of income streams actually dried up between March and April last year, this is certainly where a lot of contractual agreements helped me, because either then agreements would be made to make sure that I do maintain the necessary cash flow that I need for my business by requesting a deposit before actually executing services and ensuring that clients are obligated to settle my invoices within a certain period of time, making sure that I don't suffer from any constraints regarding cash flow. Force majeure has also become a major theme and trend that many of us as entrepreneurs and business owners have become used to. Whether it's the failure of being able to deliver goods and services, or even the cancellation of events resulting in the lack of ability to execute your services, these are just some of the themes that have become so much more critical and important to incorporate into one's contract. And where I have good standing relationships with clients, what I also had to learn is, I guess, building a sense of flexibility to make sure that we maintain the positive relationship, and where events have been able to be postponed, that we were able to negotiate how those particular fees and payment terms would be managed. That also brings me to the next point that I'd like to share, being money. Now, for anyone who's worked as a sole proprietor, specifically when it comes to the services space, one would know that it becomes slightly more difficult to actually have a product box or product tool where you say to clients, select product A or select product B, and this is the particular fee that it's for. During the pandemic and within the speaking space, again, it's one that isn't regulated. So essentially fees are charged based on how you as an individual or you as an entity view the value that it is that you bring to the table, and of course, meet the financial obligations that you'd like to fulfill within your operation. This, unfortunately, at times is fairly flexible, because whether you're working with an agency, working independently, or working as someone who might have a few more accolades and levels of experience to your name, the objectives and the goalposts are very different for everyone. Again, I highlighted that social media has democratized access to this particular realm that I work in. So this also does mean that even for individuals who are new to the game and who have wanted to gain experience and build up a new revenue stream for themselves, this is where we also have lacked an alignment in terms of regulated fees and standard charges that should be applied. So not only building up on contracts, but making sure that from a fee point of view, you're very clear on what kind of fee structure one actually has within their operations. I think many of us are well aware that following the lockdown, many businesses found themselves under pressure, and even sponsors, which I see is a question that has come up briefly. I'll be sure to address that towards the end. And that did raise a lot of questions in terms of having a COVID budget. Again, something quite important for entrepreneurs to be mindful of, because whilst you might be able to apply certain elements of discounts to your services and products, one does need to make sure that you're not completely off track just to keep revenue in place. However, that does not fulfill the further long-term profit targets that you actually have for your organization. And working within this particular media space, as well as being an entrepreneur who's a conversation strategist, this is often where I found a few learnings and some mishaps that even I had to overcome, that your revenue is not your profit. One needs to be very clear and very mindful of how you actually balance in the operating expenses, the investments that you make, and of course, having the necessary cash flow available to upgrade any particular services and assets you need in your business to be able to execute these strategies online. From the data to the PC and the equipment, all of these called for quick access to cash flow and money and funding that's available to actually make sure that I could reinvest in my business to execute my strategy going forward. So on that note, I do also want to wrap it up with what I've learned going forward and from the pandemic, and lessons that I certainly hope will resonate with many, many more entrepreneurs, primarily those who might be transitioning from being sole proprietors to the world of being an entrepreneur, and of course, making sure that you follow through with the necessary processes to scale and build your business. One thing's for certain, as illustrated by the calculator on screen, is that it goes back to money. And this is where I learned the value of saving. Fortunately, as an entrepreneur who works with a very small team and works with fellow entrepreneurs who then might be regarded as freelancers or members of the gig economy, we often collaborate on certain projects, and that has actually resulted in a cost saving on my end. So when the pandemic did hit, and I did see a reduction within the revenue streams that I was anticipating, I did have a safety pot of emergency savings, which stood me in good stead. Again, important for entrepreneurs to remember that the cash in your account does not translate into your savings. It's important to actually have separate pots with specific goals and objectives that you'd like to fulfill. So whether it's saving for any kind of tax that you might have to settle in future, whether it's saving for any emergency expenses that might have to come up within your business, or of course, any specific goals that might be related to scaling your business, that has proven to be quite important within the arena that I work in. Why I mention savings and not access to credit? Well, one thing's for sure is that when you work within the services space, it does become a lot more difficult for one to access credit, largely because financial institutions do need a sense of suretyship and assets that they can lend against in order to make sure that you are essentially good for your money. So this is where I'd like to encourage entrepreneurs who work within the familiar media space that I delve into, is to be mindful of the fact that because access to credit tends to be a little bit more difficult to gain, one does need to make sure that you're quite strict on making sure that you meet your savings targets. Cash flow. Who can forget cash flow? Well, of course, it's proven to be the key that has kept many businesses afloat, and primarily for SMMEs in South Africa. If we reflect back on the fact that FinFind, one of the leading lenders to SMMEs in South Africa, towards the end of 2020 highlighted that at least 42% of businesses had closed down on the back of the pandemic and subsequent lockdown. Those numbers have highly likely increased considerably on the back of the SA looting, as well as moving into the second quarter of 2021. But what this does show us is that essentially majority of entrepreneurs and small businesses in South Africa have struggled to survive because of a lack of cash flow. If more than half of entities in South Africa have been struggling, this tells us that we do need to adequately manage the cash flow. Now, a lot of the times banks do have a lot of software and tools and products and services available for us to access to manage that adequately. But I'd like to refer back to contracts, where one does make sure that when it comes to your invoicing processes, comes to making sure that you follow through with the complete booking order process, one does have some strict protocols in place to make sure that either you're remunerated before an event takes place, or at least make sure you have some kind of deposit just to keep you going in terms of operational expenses. And then lastly, I definitely want to leave it off on value. Like for many of us, the pandemic has brought on about a great sense of anxiety and uncertainty and even imposter syndrome. As entrepreneurs, we look to build these particular businesses, and Why that's important is, of course, to make sure that we not only fulfill a mandate and meet the client's needs that we're trying to serve, but also making sure that we are providing solutions that are tangible to the clients that we want to address. This becomes very difficult when one has been pushed into the world of entrepreneurship because of being in dire financial straits. We've recently seen from a number of companies like Sanlam and Momentum that there's been an increased number of retrenchments taking place within South Africa's corporate environment. And that in itself has pushed many South Africans to move into the world of entrepreneurship as a means of survival. When you do that, you need to make sure that you back it up with great value. So purely understand what it is that you're starting, what your mandate is, and what solution you're trying to solve. Also, in a world where access to social media, to clients, to opportunities has been democratized by technology, it is something that we celebrate because we do need more entrepreneurs to stimulate South Africa's economy. But one does need to find their sweet spot, the area that you specialize in, the area that you are most advanced in terms of your thinking, as well as the value and brand that you've been able to build to make sure that not only are you able to secure long-term relationships with clients, but you're able to differentiate the value offering that you provide versus some of your peers in the market. So on that note, I certainly hope that I've been able to give you a few concepts and ideas to be mindful of, and of course, perhaps to learn from as entrepreneurs, specifically within the services space, who not only want to make a profit, but also match their objectives to the passions that they're trying to drive and unleash, not only within themselves, but with the clients that they interact with. Gerald, I hope that was a solid, I guess, feedback in terms of my experience and, of course, some of the challenges that do remain. I am quite cognizant that on the upcoming months following the SA looting, that the pressure points might still be felt by many more entrepreneurs in South Africa.
Well, awesome comments and awesome insight, Gugu. I think there's a lot of questions which you're going to have to address in a moment. But before we go there, we'd like to just recognize and do our usual roll call. You know, we do our roll call to make sure everyone is listening. Annalisa, we see you. Anna Marie, Babalwa, Anthony, Beryl K, Betty Dos Santos, you've been here in every webinar. Well done. Boy Tumelo, Brendan, we see you. Bridget, Busisiwe. We can allow you to talk, by the way. If you're going to talk nice things, just let us know. We can give you an opportunity to also be seen. Caro, we see you. And your first question, Google, is really this. How important is a business plan? It's coming from Kayalaki and Ndlovu. Google, how important is a business plan? At what stage did you write up your business plan, and was it easy? Did you get startup capital, or how did you get going? I know you transitioned from being an employee to self-employed. Did you have to get startup funding? How easy was it? And the question was also, did you see yourself here? Was this part of the plan, or it's kind of evolved?
Thanks for that, Mr. G. I think you're 100% spot on. There definitely has to be a vision. And even if that vision doesn't make full clarity or full sense, I don't even know where I want to be in the next 10 years, but I've got a pretty clear picture of what kind of environment and where I'd like to be. But it's easier to break that down into nuggets, 12 months, 6 months, and activate that into specific targets that you can reach for yourself. And I was fortunate enough, like many South Africans, to be an employee of recognized companies in South Africa, which gave me the benefit and the comfort of a pension fund, of a salary, and of medical aid, which for many South Africans is actually a luxury, especially if you're lucky enough to be employed in South Africa. So that did provide me with a backdrop in terms of managing not only my own personal finances, but at the time as a participant in the gig economy and getting ad hoc jobs that I was able to participate in that built up the reserve capital that I required in order to start up my business. The major challenge, though, on my end was the fact that I had to be mindful of the fact that in transitioning to entrepreneurship, my income would be a lot more erratic, and I would need to have a solid business plan to understand where and how this does flow. But like many South Africans, being young, being ambitious, seeing a quick opportunity, I didn't start off with a business plan, but had to build and structure one up at least within a year of operating my business. Primarily because what I've noticed within a lot of entrepreneurs who work within the services space, where your value essentially lies within your intellectual capability, any talents or gifts that you might have, and can't be structured and packaged into a box, packaged away and then sent through on a courier company. You really do need to apply yourself as to how you'll make sure that this business is sustainable, primarily because it starts off as a one-man show where you are the CEO, you are the individual conducting the work itself, the marketing director, and of course, the manager of finances and bookings. But you also need to make sure that you at some point bring certain people on board to make sure that you're able to scale and grow your business in an adequate manner. And that also speaks to the various partnerships that one has been able to establish with a variety of not only standing clients, but of course, other peers and members of the media who then collaborate on certain projects like consultants ordinarily would do, and then move on to build a portfolio of work that would then speak for itself. So definitely where you can, try to save. I know it's very difficult for South Africans to either access credit or build up enough capital, but where you can, start with your own pocket or even build a sense of community. One thing we often don't talk about often and was addressed in the previous webinar was informal savings through stokvels. And whether we call them investment clubs or our own little stokvels, there's an opportunity there to network with people who are like-minded and who are more than happy just to provide you with, I guess, investment capital just to get started within the operations you'd like to establish.
I think you've touched on an important point, which you also came out last week. If you are that small business or entrepreneur, look at your local economy. The most small business start with support from friends and family. And also that's where you get the endorsement in some instances that your product is viable. Obviously, Gugu also spoke on the fact that she is the business. So it's important, we're going to touch on that in terms of the insurance side, because if you are sick and you are the business, how do you recover from that? So we're going to talk about that. Annalisa, I see you asked that question. Mahlodi and Ellen, you're asking more or less the same question. How do you grow your clientele? So Mahlodi and Ellen have got that side hustle, but they're struggling to grow it. Is it always important to grow the side hustle, or is it okay to stay in your main job? Because obviously you have peers who've watched you and who you started off with, who sometimes are still in mainstream employment. Is the side hustle for everyone? How do you grow your clients or make your value proposition more attractive? And let's take those questions, and then we'll go to the next speaker, and then we'll re-engage at the end of the session so that everyone gets an opportunity to hear all three speakers.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Mr. G. I guess starting off with whether or not to build a side hustle. Money, business, relationships, health, all of those are personal themes, and I guess go back to what you want to achieve as an individual. There are some side hustles which have proven to be incredibly viable to build and establish as ongoing businesses, which become self-sustainable in the long term. And when you work within the services space, sometimes this can be difficult because you, again, as mentioned, are fundamentally executing the role and the services that are required. So I would say you do need to reflect if your side hustle works for you or if you prefer other means of employment. And if so, how you mitigate against any risk of losing one or any other source of revenue. Because one thing we certainly have all learned, especially during this pandemic, is that multiple streams of income is very important. And there are various ways to actually stimulate multiple streams of income with or without a side hustle. Secondly, I do think that if you do choose to grow your side hustle, one does need to be cognizant of the environment that you're in. And as a speaker or one who might have an opportunity to collaborate with large corporates and assist them with their strategies, number one, if you want to get involved, make sure you've got skin in the game. So ordinarily for many individuals within the services space, we start out doing work for free. Whether you're a photographer, whether you're someone who writes for particular magazines or wants to write a book, but we often do the first few gigs for free or at an incredibly discounted rate, because what you'd like to build is the exposure and the credibility. That same exposure and credibility can then be used as a method of profiling your business and also feedback that can build in terms of building your credibility within the industry. Once you've established a great sense of credibility, I was fortunate enough to do that through the media companies that I worked with and engaging with a number of representatives. That then allowed me to go into the environment, understanding what my value is, understanding how to structure my contract, and of course, packaging my business to actually understand the revenue goals and objectives that I have and how we would scale this particular business. Building relationships and maintaining them definitely goes back to a one-on-one relationship. You're only as good as your last gig, is what they say. So when you do have an engagement with a corporate client, it's very important to follow up solicit some kind of feedback, as well as understand what it is that you can work on. Or even better yet, often engage with your clients to further understand what more do they need or what do they feel that they didn't require within previous conversations. But when you approach with the conversation or engagement with your clients, always looking to provide them with solutions and not pushing a sale, that's often where, number one, you build a sustainable relationship. And number two, you're able to identify new avenues of actually generating a revenue stream with current clients, instead of constantly having to chase new clients and new environments to serve. Work with what you've got, nurture those relationships, and what you'll find is that over time, there'll be a consistency as a result of the amount of work that you do. But always remember to back it up with the hard work that's required, because you are really only as good as your last gig.
Awesome, Gugu. So you're only as good as your last gig. Now, I forgot to do your bio at your intro. So you can see Gugu is a natural, and it's not by accident that we all are glued to the screen and waiting for what next is she going to say, because she's a well-versed speaker and she's a broadcaster, and she's got experience in the camera and behind the mic, and addresses many audiences of different sizes. This skill, together with a grasp of financial markets, economic data, and current affairs, has led her to host one of the most popular shows on radio, business shows on radio, which is Kaya Biz. So this makes her a popular speaker across the continent. And this forms the basis of her tasks and responsibilities as a senior anchor on CNBC Africa. And Gugu serves as a conference chair, panel discussion moderator, and program director at various industry gatherings that impact business and the investment landscape. I saw a comment on the question that said, we wish we can have you for 3 hours. Gugu, she'll give you her address, you can book her. Don't do anything for free, no more free things. Please, let's do things for remuneration. I like that point as well, because you know, sometimes when you're in the gig economy, you want this exposure, but you need to know when to draw the line between I'm looking for exposure and I am a brand now. You need to start paying for me. But we'll go back to that at the end. Gugu, please don't run away. We'll try and get everyone out by 4 o'clock. But let's move on to our next speaker, who is the head of savings and investments for relationship banking at Absa. Absa are the partner for SASI for July Savings Month, and Hilary Mangwanya is our next speaker. He holds an MBA and a BSc Honors Electrical Engineering degree from the University of Zimbabwe. And in addition, Hilary has completed a number of executive development programs, including the Strategic Investment Management Program at the London Business School and the Africa Integrated Leadership Development Program, offered jointly by Duke University and the Barclays Africa Group. Hilary has over 20 years banking experience, gained in various roles in structured debt finance, leasing, and asset-based finance, corporate governance, corporate coverage, and investments and liquidity management. Now, any small business will tell you the next decision you make from deciding to become an entrepreneur is to find a banking partner and manage your money. Before Hilary comes on stage, we'll be having a short video from Absa Business Banking. And Hilary, over to you.
That is tailor-made for my business.
Can I accept payments easily?
Can I do my business banking any time of the day, wherever I am?
Open a Business Evolve account online and get all this plus free Cashflow Manager, an integrated accounting tool. We do more so you can. That's Africanacity.
Over to you, Hilary.
Thanks, thanks, Gerald, and thanks to Sasi. Also, thanks to Gugu for that very inspirational presentation. I'm not going to try and match that standard, but certainly we'll use some of the insights as the basis for the next discussion. I'm going to try and share a presentation, some slides to go through, and we'll take questions at the end. Just let me know if you can all see that that presentation that I'm sharing.
We can, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, so I think Google covered quite a lot of key points on entrepreneurship. I'm not going to repeat some of those key issues, otherwise I'm going to spoil, I think, the message. But I want to zero in on some of the very practical tools that we can use as entrepreneurs to manage our financial environment, specifically around cash management, cash flow management, as well as saving in the business for future requirements. Now, for entrepreneurs, we know that the environment has probably never been more challenging than what we currently see. And that's just a summary of our operating environment in 2021. We have had over 16 months of lockdowns, which has meant that a lot of businesses have not been able to operate physically. Some have had to go virtual, but we know that a lot of entrepreneurs were not able to operate in the normal course of business. We have the perennial load shedding issues, power being unreliable, which also puts quite a lot of strain on our businesses. We have heard about the macroeconomic environment, the crisis that we are in as far as GDP growth is concerned. And this didn't start with COVID. Prior to COVID, we were already experiencing some strain in the economy. The events of last week, I think I need not say more, but the trauma that is caused, and of course the strain that it has caused to entrepreneurs and small businesses, and of course the loss of lives that we have seen. I think that number that's being reflected there, we have since learned that it has actually more than doubled from where we were about a week ago. So I think this presents such a challenge for anyone that's an entrepreneur or anyone that is planning to become an entrepreneur. The question is, how do we navigate all this? It's just such a lot of issues that one has to deal with. I think the most important thing for me is to emphasize that in all this doom and gloom, there is always help, and there is always hope for businesses. This could actually be the start of key opportunities coming into our businesses if we are able to leverage of all the various factors and opportunities that come our way. I'm going to focus on a few things that I think are critical from a financial point of view. The first one being the need to have good financial partners in a time like this. Now, I think traditionally we've looked at financial partners or banks as just partners that allow us to bank our funds, that allow us to open transactional accounts, that allow us to get the basic services. I think beyond that, there is now a need to look at these financial partners as trusted and reliable advisors. And I'm going to explain more around that, but it's just important to emphasize that we are no longer talking of a bank-client relationship, but actually that relationship between an entrepreneur and a trusted and reliable advisor. We also need financial partners with expertise and capacity to assist us. And I think most importantly, given that as entrepreneurs we are busy, there is that need to almost have what we could call one-stop shops, where I don't have to go and do my banking here. I go somewhere else to do my insurance. I go elsewhere to do to get financial advice. I go and do investments elsewhere, and perhaps my tax and accounting issues are handled by another entity. All this could be provided in a one-stop shop if we choose the right partners. I think the second thing is that we obviously need the right tools to manage our finances and our businesses. And again, the need to leverage the banking platforms that we are exposed to or the banking platforms of our partners is very, very critical. And that is what will help us manage some of the costs in our businesses. It's also important to note that we could actually use our banks as free consultants and mentors without having to go to other third parties for these additional services. But however, also important to note that a lot of these services and tools that our banking partners provide are always available on a digital sort of platform. This is the in thing. So as entrepreneurs, we are actually compelled to be techno savvy, because a lot of the services that we will be getting from our financial institutions are delivered through digital or through online platforms. Again, we are going to talk more about that. Then, of course, critical thing is cash flow management in the business. We'll talk about it again in a lot more detail. Managing your business risks, that's very critical. Your banking partners can help you identify and mitigate all the financial risks in your business. I think for me, what's important is to emphasize that all the excess cash in our business, we do not need to put it at risk, just in search of high returns or high yields, particularly now in a low interest rate environment. It's very, very important to ensure that our capital, our cash flows are highly protected. Then the assets in the business must be adequately insured. I think Gerald is going to talk more about business insurance. Now let's go to some of the tools that we feel small businesses and entrepreneurs can leverage off their financial institutions. And I'm going to go first to the theme that you saw in the ad that was shown. And this talks to having versatile bank accounts. Now, the ad that you showed you an account called Business Evolve, which is essentially a bank account that evolves as your business also evolves. So as your business grows, as your business goes through various stages, that bank account allows you to manage your business accordingly. Now, this is a digitally enabled basic transactional account, but that comes with a number of free business tools. And let's look at some of those tools. You get a debit card and an embedded savings or investment account without having to open one. The moment you have a Business Evolve account, which you open online, you automatically have a debit card and you have an embedded savings account, which pays you a competitive interest rate. In addition, there's something called Cashflow Manager, which is a free accounting tool. And it's also a free business tool, business management tool that comes in at no additional cost. This will, of course, help you save on bank charges, accounting software costs, and of course, bookkeepers costs. I think what's also important to emphasize is that this is a very easy to use tool. It plugs into your digital banking platform, and therefore there are no further costs that are involved in configuration or mapping it to your business. Also important is that there's free support and training that is offered. I think what I can emphasize also is that in addition to getting all these free tools, this Business Evolve allows the bank to fully understand the client's business operations, where they are in their business cycles, the cash flow cycles, and so on and so forth. And the bank can then determine when to advance facilities. So be it working capital requirements, be it term lending requirements, be it loans or whatever it is, the bank is actually able to predict that my client now requires some lending facilities. I'm going to move on to managing surplus cash. I think the most important thing is that we don't just pack excess cash in our business into check accounts. banks or good banks will provide you with proper savings and investment accounts that give you an actual return on your surplus cash, and not a 0 or 0.1% interest rate. So it's very important to ensure that you are getting value from your excess cash. Of course, the investment has to be within tolerable limits in terms of operational risks and capital risks that that the client requires. But in most cases, all our bank accounts come with no capital risks. Your capital is guaranteed. The interest that is quoted is also guaranteed. Also important is to ensure that the surplus cash meets your liquidity needs. In other words, as and when you need to utilize cash flows, you must have access to that investment and not wait for a period of time before you can access the cash. Another important thing is the minimization of working capital costs. I think very few clients, especially small businesses, realize that if you have got multiple bank accounts, for instance, one is in surplus in terms of cash, the other one is in overdraft. There are actually opportunities to offset one against the other. So the interest that you pay on an overdraft facility can actually be offset against the surplus funds that are sitting in your investment or savings accounts. Now, this is something that every good bank should be able to do for you without necessarily charging any costs. Then I think one thing that we've realized is given the current environment that we are in, the tough local environment, some small businesses are starting to see opportunities across our borders. And I think what's important to note is that your bank will always be there to provide you with comprehensive international banking solutions. There's no need for small businesses to worry about the financial complexities of cross-border trading, managing foreign currency risks, and so on and so forth. All of that can be taken care of by your banking partner, regardless of how small your business is, and also regardless of how small the international banking or trade opportunity is. Some of the key components that a good bank should be able to offer you include things like comprehensive trade and payment solutions, including things like letters of credit, site documents, and so on and so forth. Competitive foreign currency solutions, including the hedging of any foreign currency risks, the managing of exchange control issues, advisory services on all ex-con issues, also opening up of foreign currency accounts. You can open accounts in all the major currencies, and it will be a local bank account, either in dollars, euros, pound, or so on and so forth. All that can be done by your domestic bank. And of course, provision of international travel solutions. So all those solutions are available. They are not the preserve of big corporates. And in fact, I think a lot of our small businesses feel that importing and exporting is the preserve of large businesses. Contrary to that, anyone should be able to do that, and at very minimal cost if you seek the services of your banking partner to manage all the complex financial issues and transactions. The other question that normally comes up is, should I be saving or should I be investing? And I think the short answer is for a small business, or for any business for that matter, you should always be doing both. And perhaps sometimes the confusion comes in what is saving and how different is it from investing. I think without specifically answering that question, what I have attempted to do there is to just give you a horizon in terms of how we should be managing the cash in our business, and where we should be placing cash depending on what our horizon is, and also what our intentions and objectives are. In short, we save by putting money aside so that it can take care of either foreseen or unforeseen requirements. Usually when we save, we are not too concerned about what the return is going to be, because we are going to be utilizing the funds within a short space of time. So what you see on the left-hand side are the various tools that can be used for saving, which are mainly your check accounts, your call accounts, and other such savings products. And this is meant for your short-term, very short-term funds, what we call overnight funds. And that's to manage operating cash in the business, cash that we will need to utilize within a short space of time. If we open up the horizon and we start looking at perhaps 2 weeks to 3 months to 6 months, we then move into what we call tactical or reserve cash. And in that space, we want to earn a little bit of return higher than what we would get in call accounts, which are available on demand. And that's where things like notice deposits and money market accounts come in. We call those short-term to medium-term funds. The interest rate end will be slightly higher than what we get on our call accounts and on our check accounts. When it comes to long-term cash management, we are now talking of investing. And this is now the management of strategic cash. And the horizon is slightly longer than the, say, 6 months. And that's where we go into riskier assets. Although we can start with long-term deposits or fixed deposits, which will pay us slightly higher interest rates than money market funds. But if we really want to earn higher returns, we need to take a little bit, perhaps more risk in terms of capital, in terms of liquidity, and so on and so forth. And then comes in other asset classes, other investment products. That's where you get things like equities, fixed income products, exchange traded funds, and so on and so forth. And I would say for that, you really need your specialists to help you navigate that space. But when it comes to your overnight funds, short-term to medium-term cash management, your bankers will always be able to assist you with that. I think we have covered most of the issues that I wanted to go through, and I'm also conscious of time. I think I'll leave you with perhaps some clips on cash management, the importance of cash management. I think Gugu spoke about that your revenue or turnover is not equal to profit, and that profit is also not equal to cash flow. Cash flow is ultimately what keeps a business in survival, and that's what we call the lifeblood of any business. If there's no positive cash flows, a business cannot survive. I mean, you've heard that cash is king, and so on and so forth. Some say turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, but cash is the real king. But actually what we mean by cash, we are actually talking of cash flow. It is positive cash flow that keeps up a business running. I think important to emphasize during this savings month that it starts with putting some money aside in the business. Whatever positive cash flows are generated, it starts by putting them aside in order to cater for future requirements. But ultimately, what's required is to partner with a competent financial institution that can help you navigate all these other complexities and ensure that the business stays afloat. I'm going to pause there and check if there are any questions.
Thank you very much, Hilary. I think your presentation is perhaps the most important. What I was glad to hear is that your bank actually offers training for the free software, because more than often than not, you get the free software and you don't know where to start. So perhaps if you can share either on the chat or how Absa clients can actually access that free training, because that could be a game changer in terms of accessing the tools. Because I want a tool which will do my management accounts, which can show me my liquidity and cash flow, so I can become a better small business manager. Now, you can never run away from this question. As long as that brand is behind you, every small business person is going to ask you this: how can I increase my chance of getting access to capital from my bank? Most small businesses, they put their money into their bank accounts and religiously work with their bank only in the day of need to apply and be told no. How can one increase their chances of getting funding when it's needed from their bank? And that question has been asked a few times.
Yeah, look, I think that's a very fair question and a very critical question. I think I mentioned on one of the slides that with our Business Evolve account, we are able to actually anticipate when a client will need to have facilities, particularly working capital facilities from the bank. We are able to help them forecast their cash flows and provide overdrafts as and when required. I think the second aspect of that is it's not always the case that the bank knows what I'm thinking as a business person. There are times when I have seen an opportunity and I actually want to go and borrow. How do I go about that? I think once again, rather than just putting up an application, I think it's very important to be very clear what the purpose of the funding is. Of course, the business case behind it, cash flow forecasts behind that requirement. And I would say, most importantly, speak to your banker rather than just perhaps walk into a branch and say, I need a loan for this and that. I would say speak to a banker, because a banker is able to actually comprehend what you are putting together. And when I say a banker, I mean a business banker. But I think things will always vary from client to client, from industry to industry. There are times when the no is actually a very good no, because you might be seeing an opportunity which could ultimately not materialize, and you end up with a loan that you are not able to service. So I would say a conversation with your business banker is very, very important before you actually take that form and fill up to apply for a loan.
Okay, thank you on that one. So the other question is really around the COVID financing facility. I mean, the media has been awash with information that the government released COVID funds to the banks. How easy is it to access that money, and is there a set criteria, or is it just the standard lending criteria to access COVID funding? That's another question from our guest.
Yeah, look, to be quite honest, I'm not an expert on that, but I mean, the truth is that we had the funding available, particularly during last year. I think the biggest issue was that the take-up was a lot lower than was expected. So the funding was available, but the number of applications for people requiring that COVID relief were actually lower than was anticipated. I think I would be quite keen to take the details of the business that's asking for that, and then pass it on to the relevant people that can actually assist directly with that.
Okay, thank you, Hilary. So let's move on. We'll have questions at the end. We're trying to get everyone out by 4 p.m. So that means that I need to get on to my presentation, and I'll be putting on my other hat as a certified financial planning professional on insurance. And they need the importance of insurance for a small business. And that has come more to the fore, or that's become more important now, in that we've seen what's been going on in South Africa and the challenges the country has faced with the looting, etc. So a lot of small businesses have been asking, what could they do, or how do they get, should they have insurance for business? So we're going to talk and discuss a few things around business insurance, especially for a small business, an entrepreneur, sole proprietorship. It doesn't matter. It's you're self-employed. You are the one who makes those decisions. So what we're going to cover in this brief slideshow is we're going to try and identify the types of insurance you need for your small business. Remember, your small business sometimes is based on the provision of a service where you are the engine, where you are the business, you are the brand. So typically service driven businesses are the professionals. Or sometimes your small business is driven by product, which means you're manufacturing and you're producing something which people can touch, feel, sometimes taste. You need to identify the types of insurance you might be needing, and we'll also try and explain why insurance is simply important for your small business. Now, there's 6 key areas you need to ask yourself around why or how or if my small business requires insurance. The first one is what kind of insurances your business may require. We're going to go into that. The other types of insurance, we'll go into that. But you need to ask yourself, what are the reasons I need insurance? And the main reason you need insurance is simply life happens. Insurance is really cover or protection against an event that can occur in the future, which can destabilize either you, your business, or your income, or even it can hurt others. Because another reason you simply need insurance is so that you don't hurt other people and have lawsuits coming your way. There's location-related considerations. There are some locations where you need insurance, and dare I say, after what we've witnessed in the last 2 weeks in South Africa, you can see certain locations are higher risk than others. Should your business be operating in that location, insurance becomes a higher priority for you. You need to select your policy. Your agency or your agent will discuss that right at the end, and what to do once you've secured your insurance. Now, the first type of insurance I'm going to talk about is the insurance you have to have. There's some things which are mandatory. You need to have insurance to compensate third parties. They call it third party insurance. So like your motor vehicle, if you cause an accident, you need to be able to repair or compensate the person whose vehicle you might damage, or a person whose life you might harm or injure. Okay, so first thing, there's mandatory types of insurance which you need to have, so that you basically are in a position where you don't end up with liabilities which arise from there. There's now a new type of insurance you need, which is around social media and liabilities which arise from social media. As much as we all love social media and it's a great marketing tool, you need to have insurance against perhaps statements you make or misinformation which you might divulge on social media. So you might make a mistake and type the wrong price, miss out a zero on your service offering or your product. Unfortunately, because it's legally binding a lot of the time, you're going to have to sell it at that price. These are some of the things you need to realize, that social media is not a playground. It's serious business, especially when you start talking to your clients through it. You need to also have mandatory insurance against the losses from cyber attack. I mean, We saw, I think it was Liberty Life a year or two ago, were ransomed when someone got access to their database, and they had to pay Bitcoin to be released from the clutches of the criminals who managed to get hold of that database. Similarly, you and your small business must realize you have a legal responsibility on the information which you keep for your clients. So for example, your client information with the POPI Act, which came into full force the beginning of this month, you can't lose your client's details. It's not okay to just say, sorry guys, life happens, I lost my PC, I lost my laptop. No, it doesn't work like that. You can actually end up with serious liabilities. So cyber insurance, you need to have it now, specifically for that purpose. And then the other mandatory insurance is around workers' compensation and personal injury. If I'm on your premises and I fall, I need to know that I'm protected. You need to have that personal injury insurance. Same thing with your workers. If they are using a power tool and something happens, you need to be able to compensate them. And obviously there are state insurances which are available, which you need to subscribe to, but also you can have your own additional private policies around those things. If you are a service provider, where perhaps you are the intellectual capital, you're giving advice, you need to realize you need to have professional indemnity. No one is perfect. No doctor is perfect. No financial planning professional is perfect. No accountant is perfect. You make a mistake. And sometimes your mistake costs someone else money. And you need to have professional indemnity insurance so that you're covered for those mistakes. You don't go out to make mistakes, but because you are the engine of the business, you are the mastermind, you are the key person there, you need to be insured. Because on a bad day, you can give bad advice, or perhaps you are simply misinformed. You don't know everything. So as a professional, you shouldn't be stepping out without professional indemnity insurance. In many instances, professional bodies require you to have it, but make sure it's something you have. And now, all these insurances can work for you as well, by the way. When you sit with the client, show them your professional indemnity insurance. Tell them, you know what, I've got professional indemnity insurance, 20 million rand. If anything goes wrong with the advice I'm giving you, we're sorted. It also builds trust for you. So there's a marketing angle. You can't always be crying about I'm paying insurance. No, market it. Bring that policy with you on your client meeting. This is our professional indemnity. We are protected for you. And it also helps in terms of your general marketing. There's general liability insurance, which is around any liabilities which come towards your business. And also there's what they call directors and officers liability. Many small businesses have been brought down by people within the business. So sometimes you don't know that in your business, you've got someone in there who's actually working against the flow. Fraud, big business risk. And many small businesses do not see it as a risk. But the moment there's a second person in your business, it's a risk, because life happens. I've personally experienced it. Someone I trusted, I employed them, I did reference checks. They were the right person for the job. Hey, when it came to they're having hardship in their house, they did stuff, became my problem. If you are the business owner, the liability will end up with you. So have that directors and officers liability going. Gugu spoke about this. She is the key person. So I don't know if you've thought about it, GU, because if you are booked for a gig and God forbid something happens and you can't make it, who do you send? Who covers for you? You can't say, I'm sorry guys, I'm not feeling well. Unless you want to keep the bag in your company. So perhaps you need to have a network of top MCs where you say, in the event of me not making it, so-and-so will appear. And in your contract, you have it there so that the clients are also comfortable. No, the Google is top shayela here. If she's not there, we get this one and get that one. business. And again, it's about marketing yourselves, because it's those networks which I was talking about, saying freelancers must build a network. Because by having that network with other top MCs, they are all protecting their businesses, because it means that now they almost get books together all the time, because you're now aligning yourselves. But be careful again who you align with, because that's a risk in itself. But as a key person in your business, even if you're making goods, or you're an accountant and you can't work, you need to have a person nominated who can do your work for even an extended period of time. What key person insurance does is they take money and they pay that person a market-related rate to do your work. But it means your company doesn't fold, especially if you are the brains trust. So I want you right now to think about that. Who is the person you would put in your network? Google, it's okay. I'll call you at the end. List who also would take over your business in the event of something happening to you. Most of you are setting up businesses for a legacy. You do your business because you've got tingani, you've got children. They're all over the place. Mine are somewhere, they might pop up anytime in the background. But that's the reason we work. So you need to have a plan if anything should happen to you around your death. We'll cover that on the last slide as well. And you need to have that plan, especially where there's a partnership. Because in your partnership, you now introduce your business to having two people, from having two people potentially to having four people. Because if you have a spouse and they have a spouse, you may think you're running the business, the two of you. No, there's four of you in that business. And should anything happen to your partner, the partner can come and say, you know what, I don't want anything to do with this business. I want cash. Give me the cash. My husband's cash. I want it. You know, he's a businessman. And then you're like, no, we're tied up in assets. Hilary, we've got call accounts. This money is operational. Those shares, be careful. Once there's a partnership, there's a specific business insurance we have to have called a buy and sell policy. And the way that policy works is, in the event of one of you dying, the insurance policy pays out to the business so that you can buy out the partner and you can continue to have your livelihood. Otherwise, in many instances, partners disappearing has often meant the end of the business. Okay, so important. Trustee named to administer or liquidate assets. This is serious stuff. You must realize that, especially if you're a small business, you are the business. Yes, the PTY or PVT or whatever you want to call it, but it's you. So you need to realize that your personal financial planning must be aligned to your business, because those two cannot be separated. You're not yet a JSE company where there's shareholders. It's you. It's just you. And you need to have a plan for yourself. Now, what are we going to do next? Because I'm trying to get us out by 4 o'clock, so moving fast, but we'll take questions. You need to ask yourself about your professional indemnity insurances. Do you have those types of insurance? And then there's insurance also. You need to look at protection for your lenders and your investors. Hey, the bank, they're your best friend when they're giving you cash. Have you ever seen a bank when they want their money? Oh, it's different. They are not your best friends anymore. They forget about the lunch they took you on to take the money. They want their money back. So it's important, have those credit life insurances. And these are specific insurance policies. When you take out a loan, insure it, because life happens, COVID happens. You know, a lot of businesses cannot go to the bank right now and say life has happened, hey, COVID, the whole country, it's not my fault. No. You signed for that loan, pay back the money. So have a policy in place to protect you. Another one we've learned about this week, Sasria. Google spoke about it. Disasters, liability, loss of income. Things happen, riots, and it's not your fault. Yes, we understand it's not your fault, but do you have it? Because if you don't have it, it means you can watch your business literally go up in flames. And that's what's happened, unfortunately, for a vast number of small businesses who probably will never recover. And it's important. Now, in the same vein, you can have a policy for your staff, salaries, etc. So when you look at a big business and you look at the insurance amounts they pay in premiums, they're scary numbers. And the real reason behind that is because they see all these as a risk. Now, unfortunately, you don't have a risk or compliance officer to help you, but hopefully I'm opening your eyes to realize that it's not plug and plays just waking up and saying, I am the business. There's a lot of things you need to take into consideration with regards to your work. Important thing, do a beauty contest. Don't go to the first financial professional who you talk to, even if you like me. Go talk to another person and get advice which works for you. It then ties us back to our theme this year, which is saving in your language. Speak to someone who speaks your language. And your language cannot necessarily be as an English or isiZulu. It can just be a language in terms of the vibe, the energy, the understanding. This person is with my business. We're going places together. Because unfortunately, none of this insurance stuff is going to work on Google. Don't try Dr. Google. You're not going to get information. Insurance, you really need to sit down with someone who understands it, because insurance is all about the insurance policy. And if you've ever seen an insurance policy, it's an entire policy, an entire contract in small print. and there's always a point 1, 2, 25, which they can decide they're not going to pay you because of. So you need to work with a professional, especially when you're talking around insurance. But most importantly, I think I'm going to leave you this takeout, price the cost of insurance into your business. So when you do that quote, when you price your teacup or whatever you're selling or yourself, price it in. It's necessary. You are the key person. You need that insurance. Make it a fundamental operational cost. It's almost as important as your ingredients. You need it. And as I spoke before, if you have business partners, your business partner, it's like you've gone into a relationship, marriage, because the same implication when things go wrong within the business. If you don't have the right protection against your partner. I can't say my wife you can't have wife insurance. Okay, and then lastly, your personal life policies. You can't divorce yourself from your business. You can't have insurance or protection for your assets in your business and not protect the greatest asset, which is you. So you need to start from a bottom-up approach. Your personal life insurance needs to cover yourself, your family, your liabilities as an individual, and then you layer it up onto the business as well. So be careful. Don't rush into entrepreneurship, especially if you're doing high-risk work where things can go wrong or mistakes do happen. So I want you to clarify your intention. I want to be an entrepreneur. I'm the sole proprietor. Put attention to your intention. I want to do this thing. I'm going to get help. I'm going to get someone who can help me be the person I want to be. I can do this. Yeah, but 89% of entrepreneurs fail. But yeah, okay, you can do this. We can do this. You know, you have to go in there with confidence. There's no entrepreneur who ever started planning on failing. And then lastly, you can have it. You can have it all. And it's possible. But the nice thing about having seasoned entrepreneurs like we got from Google earlier is that she's told you it's a journey, eh? She didn't give us a timeline, but maybe Google, as we open the floor up to anyone now who wants to ask questions as we close, give us a timeline as to appreciating how long it took before everyone saw you on Kaya Biz. What did Google have to go through the toil? I think everyone sees your name in lights and they think last year you decided to go on Kaya Biz and come out on TV. But no, I think my first interview with Google was probably around 2016, 2015. She was already up there, but it takes time. And I think that's one of the important considerations for entrepreneurs, time. I wanted to talk about where you can get your money as entrepreneurs, but we don't have time for that right now. But stock fails. Stop crying and saying the bank is my only source. If your own family and your own friends don't have confidence in your concept, start questioning it, because they are the closest people around you and often can tell you if you've got a good product or not. So Google, what's the timeline? How did it happen? Did you magically wake up? Okay, if I can get myself to unshare this thing. Okay. Did you suddenly wake up one day and say, I'm going on Kaya Biz and CNBC? How long did it take from Google, the individual, to Google, the CEO? And let's just appreciate the time. And then any questions? I'm going to go into the questions now.
Fantastic. I'll be sure to keep it brief, Mr. G, but you are quite right. I really do wish that all these things happened overnight, right? But hardly so. Like many South Africans, I entered into the working force environment back in 2010, where all I wanted was a full-time job. By the time I sat down with you for interviews at CNBC Africa around 2013 into 2014, that's when I was still working as a full-time employee. And only really transitioned into the full world of entrepreneurship between 2015 and 2016, even though I had all the formalities of registering a business, having a tax clearance certificate and a BE certificate as early as in 2014. So even that gap was a 2-year gap where I really had to transition into thinking, evolving and working as an entrepreneur, unlike just being a sole proprietor who had these 2 separate bank accounts, my personal account and my business account, and actually dipped into a bit of both whenever I needed a top up. So that's really where the journey started in terms of thinking and as an entrepreneur. And from 2016 to date, that's been the journey of fostering relationships with individuals like yourselves, which is now transitioned into this opportunity that we're engaging in. And of course, I'm speaking to many more individuals, building up on the necessary intellectual capacity, putting in the systems in place to network with other partners, and of course, making sure that you run effectively so that whilst I am the business, but the business is able to pay me in my personal capacity a salary which keeps me going despite the volatility in the current environment that we're in.
Okay, now quick one. That's awesome. And to me, it shows that journey. And more importantly, have you ever tried partnerships in terms of, have you been approached for partnerships, and how do you measure and decide on what partnerships are worth taking? And also, we had a question earlier on these contracts. Did you read a book and start writing contracts, or how did you do it? It's important because a lot of people have faith in Google and Twitter, and guys, Google and Twitter are just platforms. You need to deal with the real stuff. Did you get a Google book on contracts and also partnerships? Have you been approached? And when you said no, what are the decisions you need to take into consideration?
Let me start with the partnerships question first, Mr. G. You're quite right. A lot of the time when it does come to establishing partnerships, there have been individuals who have approached me for certain partnerships. A lot of the time it is in our independent capacity where we look to start certain organizations and drive a particular narrative. One thing that was the short form was an alignment in terms of strategy and clarity on the vision. And number 2, making sure that we're both adding the necessary equity into the pot. So for both parties to come together and just say, oh, well, I'm using my intellectual capital isn't quite enough when because that, again, as I said, leads to a misalignment in terms of vision and objectives. So I have said no at least twice to several partnerships. And that's where I found that perhaps because we're all building our little establishments, which are primarily based on our own personal needs, on our own personal desires, as well as the industries that we've aligned ourselves with, rather collaborate on certain partnerships and projects that might emerge. And that has often made it slightly easier to say, I'm working with Mr. G today because we want to build a bridge. But next week, when I build a tunnel, I'll work with Hilary. The week after, when I want to build a road, I'll actually work with Prem. So that's where it becomes slightly more efficient in working and aligning your strengths and partnerships together. The follow-up question, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. G, was not only partnerships, but contracts. Yes, very important, especially I think because of this age where individuals run side hustles that might be service-based or even pushing products. And sometimes we forget that you need to protect yourself with paperwork. If there's anything that big companies do well is putting things to paper to hold you to account. And that's the one lesson that I also had to learn, that contracts, number 1, where you are able to find resources. Again, there's a large number of institutions that do offer support for entrepreneurs and SMMEs in South Africa. So if you do Google, be mindful of actually looking for reputable institutions that are able to offer you some kind of template. But 9 times out of 10, the template that you have will not be specific to your needs. I was in the fortunate position that I have often engaged with the professionals in the legal fraternity, conducting interviews. So when I raised my hand to ask a fellow colleague that I had conducted an interview with, just to help me in terms of guidelines, that's actually where I got that opportunity to get additional support from them. And fortunately, that was provided for pro bono. So again, leverage your networks to make sure that if you have a lawyer on call for free, quickly ask them if they can direct you to a specific person or industry or sector or company who can help you align, whether it's contracts, insurance, and other specialized needs that you might have. But do make sure that you do personalize it to suit your individual business needs.
Okay, before we call it a day, Owen, do you have something to say? Patience. I can open the mic. Puti, somebody answer. Are we talking to ghosts? Is everyone so afraid? It's important. And another part of business which we need to talk about is marriage regimes, etc. Because it's a partnership. So the dissolution of a marriage is also can be the dissolution of your business. So it's important that we bear that in mind in terms of the things we need to do now. On the contract side, I see a question here around the policies. An insurance policy is exactly that. It's a contract. And you know, someone is saying that I didn't know you could get insurance on loans, and you can get insurance on anything that can happen. As long as an actuary can work out the probability of it happening, you can insure against it. There's none, there are very few things insurance companies will not insure against. It's the premium that's going to get you, but they will insure against anything. You can insure against somebody not paying you. You can insure against you not paying someone. You can insure against someone running away with your money. You can insure against the world's, you know, ending theoretically. But it's important to realize that's how important insurance is in your business. So yes, trade insurance. I'll call back Hilary. Escrow. This word escrow, it sounds fancy, né? Fancy words. Escrow, okay? Now, escrow is basically a facility where I'm buying something from Google, but until I see it at my house, she doesn't get the money. Because especially now that we're dealing with a virtual world, you can't just type in send. Because tomorrow when you log on to that website, you get that error 404. Sorry, we're gone with your money. So it's important that you realize that escrow is important. Hilary, does Absa offer escrow accounts in terms of saying, I want to protect, they call it counterparty risk. You must use the fancy words, then they take you more seriously.
Yes.
Risk.
No, certainly, yes.
Okay.
So I think escrow is the name that we have always known from the past. There is now a lot more instruments that cater for that type of risk, for counterparty risks, whether it's domestic, whether it's international. And you can imagine that if it's international risk or international counterparties, the risk levels can actually be very highly elevated. So the bank offers comprehensive arrangements for both domestic and international counterparty risks.
I think there was a question earlier on against someone who wants to start an import-export business. Import-export, very important. Don't release funds until you've seen the goods. And normally your bank can talk to their bank and the banks can agree that they'll only release the funding when the goods arrive in SA and they are satisfactory. Because sometimes these pictures, it's like, you've seen the pictures, what they do on social media, Google, yeah? And they put those, filters, and they look so handsome and beautiful, like, these are not real people. How? You know, I'm waiting to get a filter as well. I'm gonna do a filter picture on that. But it's important. Things don't always look the way they are when they arrive. And it's the same thing. And I think Tabitha is asking, I didn't know that a marriage regime can affect your business or your contract. Tabitha, that other person in your life owns half, unless you've actually gone into an anti-natural contract with or without accrual. They own half your business. They're just waiting. You know when they say they're eating popcorn, waiting for the time they can come for your money. But it's been great, everyone. I mean, we can talk for hours. This is an important topic, yes. But I thank all of you for joining us. Puti, Preska, Sam, who else is on our roll call? We've got Preska, Perlo, Noxie, we've seen all your questions. Mandy, Mazizi, everyone, thank you very much. This recording is available on the SASI Facebook as well as YouTube. And we have two winners. We're giving money because our partners are banks. We said they must show us they're a real bank, must give us some money so we can see. So now I can't find the people we're giving the money to. Oh, Tamron, there's so many questions. Okay, I'm gonna find the people.
It's in the chat, Gerald. It's in the chat to panelists.
Oh, chat to panelists. There's so many chats going on. Okay, give us the names, Tamron. please.
So our winners for today, drumroll, are Tabitha Kekana and Annalisa Plandayishi. Congratulations. We'll be in touch to get your bank details, and you've each won 1,000 Rand, courtesy of our sponsor, Absa.
1,000 Rand cash coming to you. Thank you very much. Gugu, always a pleasure. We know your time is valuable. If you want to catch Gugu 6 p.m. Kai FM, I think she'll be on, or is it 5 p.m.? So she has to go quickly and do her other income generating opportunity. Hilary, Mangwanya, Absa, we love you. You are great sponsors, great partners. Thank you for always supporting us. Prem Govender, our chairperson, she's been here making sure that I don't get too funny and I behave myself. But Prem, thank you very much. Tamron in the background, making sure everyone is connected online, we thank you. And all the participants, thank you very much. My last thing is to give a throw forward. We've got one more webinar this month on the 28th of July, same bat channel, 2:30 next Wednesday. This is by far our most subscribed webinar. I've never seen people sign up to a webinar like this. There's a conspiracy going on. It's our webinar where we're talking to Womandla, the power of a woman, the power of women, those strong women who are carrying households, carrying children, sometimes carrying baby husbands as well, and they're making things happen. Some of them are generating multiple income streams without complaints. So Womandla, next week we are having an expert panel of ladies who are going to talk and navigate the challenges of being a woman in COVID land and in South Africa, and sometimes also carrying baby husbands and baby children, you know. Prem Governor will be one of our speakers. We've got Leilani Bezentut, who's the CEO of the Financial Planning Institute of Southern Africa. And then we've got Esther Mukumba as well, who's big on social media. She's a mom, and all week she's been posting dividends. Hey, I've never been so, hey guys, she's making money because if those dividends are coming through, she's doing something right with her finances. So she'll be joining us next week. So please do sign up. Why is it important to listen to the women? Here, my last word of advice. A woman has a womb, which a man does not have. And what's the purpose of the womb? The womb multiplies. So when one sperm goes into the womb, it comes out as a baby. That's the power of a woman. You give a woman good seed, good love, happiness. If you give her matata, problems. Have you seen miserable men? That's the one. They blame the women, but no, it's their fault because the woman is only magnifying and multiplying. If you want your business to do well, same thing. Bring a woman into it, do it as a partnership. So I'm going to listen to the women because they know a thing or two about making things happen. South Africa, thank you very much. See you next week, same time. Thank you for all the chats. The questions which have not been answered, we will try and answer them in due course. It's 4:10. I'm sorry, South Africa, but we're 10 minutes over, but please forgive me. Thank you very much, and we look forward to you joining us next week. Tamron, please make that song play. Otherwise, I'm going to sing again. Okay, thank you for joining us.
Should we join you, Mr. G?
Thank you for joining us. That's the song. Just say thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for joining us. That's as simple as that. But thank you, everyone. We have over 130 people. That's cool.